We are now in the Kant lecture, part 3. Here we're going to discuss that the goodwill is good in itself, regardless of its effects. We're going to discuss the psychological and logical meanings of that the goodwill is good in itself, regardless of its effects. We will also discuss the Kantian notion of duty and the distinction between that which is merely according to duty and that which is from duty. A person can act merely according to duty, and a person can act from duty. But what is the goodwill, about which we have talked quite a bit by now for the past two parts of the lecture on Kant? Our first insight into the goodwill is that it is something that only reason can access, but not desire. Desire is interested in pleasure, but reason is interested in the goodwill. Our second insight into the goodwill is that it is good in itself, regardless of what it affects in the world. Kant claims that we all know and understand that, and that he merely brings our attention to it and asks us to dwell on what it would mean for that to be central to what the goodwill is. That the goodwill is good in itself, regardless of its effects in the world. There is a psychological meaning of that the goodwill is good in itself and not due to its products. The goodwill is good, even if no one enjoys its products. What's right is right, whether people happen to enjoy that or not. But there's also a logical meaning of that the goodwill is good in itself and not due to its products. If it is the source of all that is good, then it cannot be made good by something else, and it cannot be a means to some other purpose. In this sense, Kant writes that the goodwill is not good because of anything it accomplishes or because of any purpose for which a person may employ the goodwill. The goodness of the goodwill is neither made nor increased by whatever happiness it leads to, nor is it broken or decreased by whatever suffering it may lead to. What's right is right, whether people happen to suffer from it or to benefit from it. The fundamental insight here is that what we do is right simply because it is right, not due to that it increases happiness or decreases suffering in the world, either our own or that of others. Thus, it appears from the standpoint of pure reason, not from the standpoint of desire. As beings of both reason and desire, we have both of these standpoints. But we also understand rationally that the standpoint of reason is higher than that of desire. Desire simply goes for what is pleasant, whereas reason thinks about what's right and what is not. The third insight into the goodwill is that our notion of duty, duty is an idea of reason, reflects, in part, but to a significant extent, what we mean by the goodwill. So the idea of duty really captures quite a bit of this idea of the goodwill. Duty is something that we must do, whether we want to or not, unconditionally, because it is right to do so. That is a concept or idea of reason. The goodwill is just like duty in this aspect, and is also a concept or idea of reason. From the standpoint of desire, however, we simply do what we like, want, or prefer, and that is the very opposite of duty. So the notion of duty is closely related to that of the goodwill. Kant claims that we all understand this about duty in relation to the goodwill and reason, and also that we understand that there are two ways of willing duty. The two ways are acting from duty and acting merely according to duty. The shopkeeper illustrates this difference. A shopkeeper who charges everyone the same price and does not overcharge the inexperienced because it is advantageous to do so, that shopper acts merely according to duty and does not have goodwill. It's advantageous not to overcharge people because then one would have a bad reputation and people would just stop coming to one's store, right? So a shopkeeper who charges the same price to everyone without overcharging anyone, because it is advantageous to do so, acts merely according to duty and does not have goodwill. On the other hand, a shopkeeper who charges the same price because that is the right thing to do, apart from any considerations of advantages and disadvantages, that shopper acts from duty and has the goodwill. The usual comment would be is that the difference is in the intentions, as consequences remain the same for both of these shopkeepers. But we must stay with Kant. The difference is in what each shopkeeper wills. In other words, an act is moral if it is done with a moral will or the good will. That we know in no way depends on the consequences, effects, or purposes of actions.